They're
tried
really gonna
some of these things
pretend.
before. I'm not saying it's for sure. It's like exactly what has happened, or that's the case, or whatever. But like, make it a little bit more believable, buddy. I'm not saying
I'm
I don't
also just
believe you.
fascinated, like, why these people who are so wealthy cannot find a Botox guy to do Botox in the proper way.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, is it like, are we like past the era of like when people are like,
yeah, it's because they're susceptible to being upsold. You're probably getting a little bit too much.
believe me, you're gonna want more of this.
Believe me, folks, you're gonna want
All right,
more
well, hope he's
Botox
doing
and
better.
more cocaine
Those
in
Zins
my
are gross.
administration. Believe me.
What's that?
This Zen stuff looks gross. I don't know
Isn't
if
it
it's that much
just?
of an improvement on coke. To be
It's
honest.
just nicotine, right? Those Zyn ones. What's the point? Do you get high from nicotine? I
Yeah.
thought you get high from the tobacco. Or
Nicotine.
neither.
That's what it is. It's nicotine in
Right.
the tobacco.
addicted to it.
Right, but that's the stuff that's the stimulating part of it.
Yeah. In fact, if you ask Tucker Carlson, if you ask this guy,
Sniffing.
nicotine is the best drug there is. Okay, sir. Time to go. According to Tucker Carlson, nicotine is a wonder drug. According to Tucker Carlson, nicotine makes you go like this.
Nicotine is a stimulant.
Right, I know. Okay, but then what's the point of just having the? Okay. Nicotine is the stimulating part of tobacco.
Yeah.
This was never my
Wow.
vice, so I don't know
Probably,
anything about
yes.
tobacco.
Yes.
Wow. Emma is learning about nicotine live on air. That's crazy.
That's why people have nicotine patches and.
Right, but that's the part that makes you like
Yes.
wakes you alert. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry.
Oh boy.
Oh, boy.
Hey, folks, once again, Trump's personnel picks are all about loyalty over expert.
A pall just fell over the entire broadcast. People were like, "Wait, Emma, you don't know about this?"
John Thune today has reported that he has told Donald Trump that Pete Hegseth, weekend host of Fox and Friends, and former head of, I think, two organizations where he was asked to quit, or he was sort of like eased out because of his excessive drinking and inappropriate behavior with women, and also the guy who was accused by a woman of rape, who was forced to sign an NDA or did so, I guess.
After going to the police, and then also a nurse where she spoke about her feelings about what happened to her that evening.
And Pete Hegseth, again, who has not run any organization with a budget greater than $15,000. And I can tell you, as someone who runs an enterprise with a budget greater than $15,000, I am not qualified for anything involved in running large organizations.
Get a little liquor in you, and you might feel a little more confident.
Well, that's true. Maybe, yeah.
The value.
Maybe I'm just a little bit too uptight, but
Perhaps. The organizations he was running, we should say, at least one of them was a Koch brothers funded attempt to privatize the VA. So, like, he's been down the conservative kind of, I don't know, rabbit hole for quite a while. Not rabbit hole, but he's been a good soldier for their causes. And that's
It's some kind of hole. It's some kind of hole.
concerning to me if they want to continue to privatize, like, things in the DOD.
here is Lindsey Graham, however, and this is what's interesting. Pete Hegseth is sort of selling himself as a guy who's going to not engage in wars, right? Isn't that his big thing? Like,
I don't know about that, Davey.
I don't know if anybody believes this, but that's supposedly the pitch and why they don't want him. But here's Lindsey Graham with a twist on that, with
Ooh, a
speaking
twist.
of someone who
A twist? Well, that's got me
twitching and twisting.
speaking of drinking, with Maria Bartiromo. Here is Lindsey Graham.
Will support whatever gets us over the line, but I am worried about delay when it comes to border security.
Senator,
Delay equals danger.
I'm going to get into that with Senator Ron Johnson. Real quick on these cabinet nominations. Look, Giorgia Meloni, Prime Minister of Italy, in Mar-a-Lago this weekend with President Trump. No doubt
great.
talking about the
Amazing.
threats on the global stage. What are your thoughts here in terms of the terrorism element and getting President Trump's national security team in place? Do you have confidence that all of his cabinet nominees will be confirmed?
Yeah, I do, and I want to do them sooner rather than later.
Oh,
when
great.
President Trump left office, we had the most secure border in American history. The caliphate was destroyed, ISIS was destroyed, and Iran was in a box. We killed Soleimani. Soleimani, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard leader. The last 4
None
years
of
have
that
been a
is true,
friggin'
but fair
disaster.
enough.
They rolled back every policy that worked on the border. They went back into the Iran nuclear agreement, giving out to hundreds of millions of dollars.
The Iran nuclear agreement was good, actually.
All right, these are just two
Egregious lies.
egregious and in many respects lamentable lies. Bradley, can you Google the number of immigrants coming across the border? Historical. Maybe we can get a chart. Now, I have a real problem with the Biden administration's immigration policy. But the fact of the matter is that to the extent that we are denying people asylum, to the extent that we are preventing people from having a better way of life,
Me gustaría. Oh, hello. Please don't hurt me.
you can look at where we are in August of 2024, at least, and it's actually down from there versus, let's say, May 2019. Now, of course, it dropped during the COVID, and there was a lot of pent-up demand, as it were.
Because of Title 42, and then you see what it basically Biden it expired in 2023 earlier. If that's maybe we should look that up.
But basically, we are down now. Of course, Obama had the numbers at a real low ebb because he was deporting more people than many in history. But Graham's he's just lying. And in terms of the Iranian nuclear deal, Biden also failed to get back into that.
Right.
All of the fact of the matter is that the reason why these any type of monies were returned to Iran or released on some of those because Trump unilaterally left the deal.
And the idea that it's that we're paying Iran for this deal, which the Republicans like to say
their money.
over again. We unfroze assets that we froze in order to incentivize them to agree to a deal that was working.
Went back into the Iran nuclear agreement, giving out to hundreds of millions of dollars is used for terrorism.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Maria.
The confirmations, do them now, do them quick. Get them all done in January, February. We need our team on the field. We need an FBI director. We need an attorney general. We need them all. Get it done. We got to get it done.
So
we're under attack here. We're at war.
You're prepared.
Wait, pause it for a second. Wait, what? We're under attack here? We're at war?
Relax, Lindsay.
I thought Pete Hegseth was going to get us out, keep us out of wars. Now we're in a war. Who are we fighting?
Oh,
Ain't no war
the
but class
cartels,
war,
apparently.
baby.
Is this Lindsey Graham endorsing Donald Trump, the dove, the anti-war president's repeated musings about invading Mexico?
What's amazing about all this is just going to be like just how much of what Trump sold to his the base that they're not going to care about in 3 months.
95% of it. What about the taxes on tip stuff? I'm not hearing that, or no taxes
the
on tip. I'm
taxes
not
on
hearing too
tip,
much about that as it relates to reconciliation or any of the things that he promised.
Taxes on tips wouldn't be able to go into reconciliation, I don't think. because it's not,
that's a big
government.
shame. I really wanted it to.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, Democrats.
Tough one.
But prior to this, you could hear at the top of this clip that Graham is talking about why he wants to split it in two, because he wants to get the border security stuff in with the reconciliation. And then there's a lot of other stuff, and the tax cuts. They want those. Those are the two things that the diehards
You gotta
want.
get
The rest of the
those.
stuff,
Great.
It's just going to
Amazing country we've got here. It's going
And,
great.
But it sounds like Mike Johnson wants to do one big, glorious, beautiful bill.
Glorious, beautiful
that
bill.
goes.
Select or stand in circle.
Meanwhile, on the front, according to Lindsey Graham, as you know, we are at war. We're under attack.
We're under attack by immigrants.
It's unclear by whom.
Doesn't matter.
It
Yeah, it doesn't
really
matter.
doesn't matter.
By
We're
wokeness.
always by wokeness.
That's why we're going to bomb
no,
Iran.
the woke.
Bill Cassidy,
woke
the
is
chair of the
attacking,
Senate
bro.
Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. Again, this is coming now with word that John Thune says that Hegseth has the votes. It sounds like they may be sort of like doing some horse trading. We'll give you
horse
Hegseth,
trading.
but RFK might be a problem. I don't know if RFK really is too concerned about that. He'll just go start like a anti-vax media outlet.
That might be
But-
preferable.
I think, I suspect he wouldn't have to deal with any type of like conflicts of interest or anything like that.
He's
Aaron
Drag him to the
Rodgers is
bombs,
maybe
please.
retiring. Perhaps they could finally consummate that thing.
They could be co-hosts. But here is Senator Bill Cassidy coming out, and really, this is heresy for Trump supporters.
No.
Your committee is going to be overseeing RFK Jr.'s hearing, and there are some reports that Democratic Senators John Fetterman, Bernie Sanders might be giving him a nod of support. How is RFK Jr. faring among Democrats on your committee?
I haven't spoken to him about it. I just don't know. I will meet with him this coming week. I look forward to the interview. I agree with him on some things and disagree on others. The food safety, I think the ultra-processed food is a problem. Vaccinations, he's wrong on. And so I just look forward to having a good dialogue with him on that.
Okay.
Okay.
Vaccinations he's wrong on. Could you elaborate, please,
Yeah, please,
Senator?
please
So this-
elaborate.
We're not
sir.
going to be talking about that.
That will be fascinating. Do they try to sell this to Donald Trump with Operation Warp Speed and try to appeal to his ego on that front? Because John Thune, the Republican caucus in the Senate, this was McConnell's handpicked guy, right? So they kind of repudiated
sir.
Donald Trump by not going with what he endorsed Rick Scott at the 11th hour. The Senate Republicans still want to continue Mitch McConnell's legacy of working for corporate power in a very straightforward way. I mean, Mitch McConnell contracted polio at one point and it affected his life. He's been very critical of RFK Jr. So maybe you're right. The idea, though, that Hegseth...
It's a real shame because I so
a-
much
it's a
wanted
real
to
shame, folks.
regulate food
a real shame,
processing
folks.
and bad food out, like
Yeah, I just so
Clean
wanted
up
to do that.
McDonald's, and get rid of corn subsidies, but I guess
No processed food. Okay.
didn't want that.
Yeah. So we'll see how that plays out,
It's like
but
it's Porthos' turn on the pedestal.
they don't care too much about the Hegseth rape stuff. They're fine with that.
Well, that cuts both ways.
That cuts both ways, folks.
It's nice to have folks that you can see eye to eye on.
Right. He sees himself in Hegseth.
It's going to be interesting hearings to
Collect or
see
stand in circle.
RFK Jr. Sort of walk away from his vaccination stuff, if he will. I mean, we'll
if
get
he
a sense
will.
at that point where he thinks is most lucrative. Also, don't forget, it's not just Hegseth and RFK and every other lunatic, frankly, who is problematic in terms of who's going to be heading these departments. And I will say this, that much of these people are figureheads. The real damage to most of these entities are going to be done by people whose names we will barely be aware of. Their deputies, their undersecretaries, the middle to upper management. So in some respects, I feel somewhat comfortable having these lunatics atop of these agencies. Having Betsy DeVos at the Department of Education was helpful insofar as she was a lunatic and could bring attention to what they were doing in the the Department of Education. And of course, she's not the one doing this. It's all the people underneath her.
Requiem, good to see you, bro. They tried to take away my Monday stream, but I stopped the steal, brother. It turns out you can stop the steal if the steal involves your work, making you work late. Then you just work late and then you stream. Forehead, genius.
She certainly has no problem with what's being done, but it is helpful to have cartoon villains at the top of these places who are easy targets to,
Jump 3 times.
Jump 3 times.
Draw the public's attention to. This person, the director of national
goes the body.
intelligence, I would imagine, is going to be more problematic for other people in government than necessarily the American public. I mean, I don't know if there is a director of national intelligence that's going to that normal people can be like, oh, this person's fighting for me, or fighting for U.S. peace but.
I agree, but it might be a bit problematic if our director of national intelligence is, say, just in theory, a member of a cult. That's pretty compromising, I would say.
Oh, really?
What do you mean?
I
There are
don't
plenty
know.
of evangelicals.
Here's Tulsi Gabbard. Now, to be fair, this was a full 9 years ago. Mm-hmm. This is back when she was a Democrat.
Taking cute pics of my cats in the middle of the key, by the way. Totally legitimate to
the
do.
leaders of the International Society of Krishna Consciousness. Interesting.
Oh, wow.
Those of us who are the spiritual children and grandchildren of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, would all be lost orphans were it not for His compassion and mercy.
Nice.
My Gurudev, Srila Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa, has said that while we will never be able to repay the debt of gratitude that we all owe Srila Prabhupada, what we can do is be pleasing to him by always taking shelter in the holy names of Krishna. By taking shelter in the names of Krishna, we too may become lovers of Krishna, whose lives are motivated by compassion and love for others. My dear
that sounds
friends,
good.
in this way, with the sweet names of Krishna always upon our lips and in our hearts, we will always be able to transmit the transcendental nature and glories of Srila Prabhupada's journey to the United States of America.
Well, you can really tell his audio is 9 years old. Jesus Christ.
And the Western world. So on this historic and auspicious day, we should take this opportunity to beg for the blessing of Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, so that we too can taste the nectar of love for Krishna and be motivated by compassion.
That's some good
To
nectar.
use our lives working for the spiritual and material well-being of others.
So, okay.
Except Muslims.
Again,
Yeah, except Muslims.
Except for Muslims.
Yeah,
You
except for
get the
Muslims.
sense of the vacant.
But I mean, that's consistent. The Hindus hate Muslims as well. So no wonder the evangelical right has found ally in India's fucking Hindu fascist government.
See behind her eyes there. So, we've had Mike Preisner on to talk about this, and I just really think that the cult element of this is not being discussed enough with her. So I guess she and her family are a part of this thing called the Science of Identity Foundation, which was an offshoot of the Hare Krishnas. And I think they actually rejected Science of Identity because it was this guy named Chris Butler who renamed himself something else, and that's who she's referring to in the video, who has been accused of rampant abuse within
Jump
this
3
cult.
times.
Of children as well, showing them sexual material, and the underpinning of
Virulently
Muslim
LGBT
and anti-LGBTQ. But why when people talk about in the mainstream media oh, she loves authoritarian dictators or whatever, it's such a small sliver of what the reality is. It's because she's a part of this organization that is virulently Islamophobic. So she doesn't didn't like Assad for reasons that were anti-imperialist or whatever. The reason that she doesn't speak out about the genocide in Gaza is the same reason that she was supportive of Assad. It's because she's okay with slaughter as long as it's against Muslim people. She also was in favor of the torture regime under the Bush administration. She was doing media tours under Obama about how he wouldn't say radical Islamic terrorism. So the two things really that motivate her,
I remember
if
those
there's anything,
days. Those days
like
were
you
funny.
see how it's just, there's not much behind there.
Why won't he just say this extremely racist buzzword phrase that we made up? Radical Islamic terror. Not to be confused with radical imperialist terror, radical evangelical terror. No. Those are all fine. No, the one we specifically hate is, those guys, the Muslims. Yeah, got to get that in there. Disgusting.
But it's Islamophobia and it's LGBTQ hatred, and it's all from this cult, which one's... Yeah.
You're forgetting the nectar of love of Krishna.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah, it's true. Good call out, Sam. Get her ass.
Rejected her.
I want to just say
crew.
That listen, cults are particularly nefarious in the way that they warp the brains of people in them and turn them into weird authoritarian, and it's very difficult to deal with even coming out of a cult, never mind staying in a cult.
True.
In terms of what it does to your worldview and your ability to function within society. It inhibits your ability. But let me also just say, and this isn't in her defense necessarily, but it's to be even-handed. I also think that J.D. Vance, as a member of either Opus Dei or Opus Dei adjacent TradCon Catholicism, is also just as twisted. The authoritarianism that comes from religious fundamentalism, you want to call it authoritarianism, you want to call it, ultimately patriarchy, or some form of religious fundamentalist hierarchy. This is
better
all
interrupt
bad
has been
things.
called.
These are all bad things to have in if you are someone who cares about democracy. If you're someone, and I don't mean Disney World democracy, but I'm talking about sort of input and a sense that everyone has some measure of sovereignty, and that the government should in some way reflect the will of the people, as opposed to a bunch of in loco parentheses.
Jump 3 times.
Parentheses.
Yeah. We just had someone on to talk about Opus Dei, so it's not about Hinduism as a religion, it's about cults and that kind of mentality and what that breeds, and the compromised position that puts people in if they're going to be in high levels of government, like the Director of National Intelligence.
Yeah, I think the effect being in a cult has on your intelligence, maybe not want to be Director of National Intelligence. I don't know if this is true, but it's something that I wish I could tell Michael, because I think he'd think is funny. Anil Dash, who's been in the studio actually for the Two Dope Boys show, tweeted out, Gabbard has no South Asian ancestry. Nobody in her family does. They're all just members of this cult and fetishize their version of Hinduism. She regularly blurs this line, lets people misinterpret her first name to imply that she's a member of our communities, but she's not. Now, I don't know if that's true, but it is, if true, funny to me that I didn't suspect that at all, but she's a big...
That was a big
would
poll.
be keeping with said
was
cult
a very
leaders'
big poll.
teachings. Chris Butler, who renamed himself something that would be a bit more appropriating.
Meanwhile,
It was a very big poll. No doubt about that.
It was the American Historical Association. This is an association that represents 10,000
It was certainly a big poll. It was
in this
yes.
country.
Oh my God!
Academics.
Stuck on the fence.
Voted
Jump 3
over.
times.
I guess it was on. Maybe it was on Sunday. to condemn. It voted 428 to 88. This is at the group's annual conference. That is an overwhelming number of people to approve a resolution opposing scholasticide in Gaza and the U.S. government's funding of
We're certainly not
Israel's,
timing this, I fear,
war.
but it's fine.
Scholasticide means the intentional eradication of an education system. The resolution, which says Israel's military campaign has effectively obliterated Gaza's education system, calls for a permanent ceasefire and for the association to form a committee to help rebuild Gaza's educational infrastructure. Now,
AOE incoming.
I've seen some people sort of say, like,
Oh, did the
what's the
tank
point
just
of
die?
this? Where's the material?
Ooh, am I getting
The
feared
value
into
of
those
this,
mobs? I hope
aside
not.
from it being recognized by scholars as to what's happened there, and increasingly we're seeing more and more Israelis as well recognize that what's going on there is genocide. But the value is that on college campuses,
Oh, hello.
where we have seen
Jump 3 times.
administrators attempt to shut down protests about what the U.S. is doing in support of Israel and of Israel.
Well, that was another
and,
big poll.
Claim that it is a function of anti-Semitism. I have no doubt there are anti-Semites on college campuses. There are anti-Semites that have always been on college campuses. There are also vehement anti-Palestinians on college campuses.
Incoming.
But the idea that you have academics being punished by the administration for being supportive of Palestinians, for speaking out against Israel,
Kill me.
this is going to make it a lot harder to do. And
We're definitely not timing this now, by
it's
the
going to make it
way.
a lot harder to justify these crackdowns because these protests are going to continue. And
But you know, it's after midnight on Monday night, strictly speaking Tuesday morning. Like, we're in the real silly hours now for doing keys. We're having a real silly Billy time. And that's fine. Because again, by changing the way rewards are paid out in these keys, a process that took way too long, but I'm glad it's finally happened.
AOE incoming.
Even if we don't time this key, I'll still get enough crests to do another upgrade before I go to bed.
Incoming.
That's the real magic of getting Harbinger of the Gilded, getting that discount on Gilded crests. I can really get my character over that last little hump.
it's also just important to have it on the record.
I just want ponder that for a moment, right? The thousands and thousands of children who have not had any education and have been out of school at the very least, but
For
also
years.
experiencing high levels of starvation and malnutrition and dehydration and the trauma
Children.
of that since
Thousands of
October
children.
2023.
Thousands
This
of children.
entire generation, if anybody who does survive, will both have physical scars, and you see images of children, little girls with their hair falling out from stress because of how sad and terrified they are, but also just a generation lost in terms of being able to educate themselves and grow in a normal developmental pattern, even within the existing structure of like being inside of an open air prison that Gaza was previously.
And let's be clear, about 1 million of the 2 million people there, maybe more, are below the age of 18.
Yep.
So when you have wiped
Jump
out
3
an
times.
entire education system, you're talking about like this is not some platitude, the future of these people. I mean, like, this is a very, very, like, substantial material implications. I mean, aside from all the other horrors that are going on.
Aside from all the other horrors.
Here is an UNRWA official describing conditions in what she saw in Gaza, a Gaza hospital. again, we've reported in northern Gaza, not virtually, there are no medical facilities. In the rest of Gaza, there's barely any.
So I've been in Nasser Hospital after one of these mass casualty events, so the strike in Mawasi, and it's exactly as the last couple of days has been described. In the hospital, it's chaos. There is blood on the floor. There is no hygiene equipment. Doctors are trying to mop up the blood with water. They're spreading infection. You go to one room. I've had a woman scream at me in absolute despair and horror because her son was killed in a strike in the so-called humanitarian zone. Her daughter was lying on the bed next to us, paralyzed, and she's screaming at us because she said the Israelis told us to move here because it was safe. My son is killed. My daughter is paralyzed. What do I do? Where do I go? In the next room, there's a toddler who has lost 2 limbs with no parents. And this is just on repeat. This is what we see after every incident.
This is just how they live every day.
Now, the Israelis are talking about ceasing quite soon cooperation with UNRWA. If they do that, what happens to the large amounts of aid needed every single day to be trucked into the Strip?
When I left Gaza just a few days and weeks ago, the people were being crushed to death waiting for food, for flour, and children have now started freezing to death because they don't have enough shelter items. This is the situation with UNRWA on the ground. This is the situation with the largest humanitarian organization doing everything they can with the rest of the United Nations.
Healthcare workers have been saying
Words
this.
fail.
It's not.
Yeah, this is
it's
not
been falling on deaf
news,
ears. Like
sadly.
we had
Evident for over a year.
Right. In October, there was a letter that we encouraged people to sign from 99 U.S. Like again, American, not terrorists, American physicians, surgeons, nurses, midwives who had volunteered in Gaza. And they said that the death toll was at minimum, based on their calculation, 118,000, and we're still seeing this like 43,000 death toll number being repeated. Like, you know,
That's just so everyone who comments on it at like establishment newspapers can feel slightly better when they say sit down with Anthony.
I'm glad they're actually finally addressing this, because the Lancet was estimating 6-digit casualties literally 6 months ago. Like, it's been well over 100,000 dead in Gaza for quite some time. But the legitimate news media has been able to get away with this rhetorical sleight of hand for almost a year now, where the death total has just not moved. They've just stopped updating the death total. It's stayed somewhere around 40,000, 45,000, 46,000. No, it's more like 146,000. Make no fucking mistake. Like, it's so infuriating to me
Collect or stand
that
in
they're
circle.
allowed to get away with it. They're allowed to just fucking say, "Oh no, we know what the number is." You know, it hasn't moved in 8 months. Don't worry about that though. No. The Lancet had it right months ago, and that letter from those doctors back in November had it right then as well. It's in the 6 digits. It's in the high 100,000s. Probably 250,000 by now. Despicable.
Anthony Blinken over kale salad. They say like, "Oh, what about the 40,000 people that have been killed?" Because if you actually said, "Hey, you in your Senate confirmation said that the Chinese were doing a genocide against the Uyghurs. Could you also use that word with what's going on in Palestine?" And Blinken just says no. And that,
Well, let's listen to that. Let's listen to this.
or read it. Right. It's text interview. I
No,
think.
we have an
great.
interview.
Oh, okay.
This is number 10.
Oh, sorry.
This is, I don't know if it's specifically that interview you're referencing.
no,
but
mine
this
was
is,
the Financial Times,
this is
New York Times.
this is the New York Times.
Secretary Blinken,
Too many times,
worry
folks.
that perhaps you have been presiding over what the world will see as a genocide.
Wow, she had to really carefully walk that one out on the plank. You know, what some people in this crazy world
Collect or stand in circle.
who can see things with their own 2 eyes might consider to be a genocide. What do you think about that?
No.
It's not, first of all.
Okay.
Second, as to how the world sees it, I can't fully answer to that.
Yeah, why would the U.S. Secretary of State give a shit about that, dude?
Everyone has to look at the facts and draw their own conclusions from those facts.
We have.
Yeah, we do.
My conclusions are clear. I think as well.
This is misinformation.
There is, in the wake of this horrific suffering, the traumatization of an Israeli population, the Palestinian population.
Gotta put them first, dude.
There's also a light.
All right, I can't.
Yeah, please turn this genocide era off, Sam. Jesus Christ.
It has been my position, it doesn't matter what you call it, but it does matter to them.
Yeah.
But this is what's fascinating. Click on that. This is a Holocaust museum in Houston. There was apparently, according to a Holocaust museum in Houston, and I don't know, maybe it's not recognized by other Holocaust museums. I'm not sure. But
Range 5.
well, you could go. I guess you could go to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. But let's just stay here. Genocide in Bosnia. Let's just scroll down. Starting in 1992, Serbia set out to ethnically cleanse Bosnian territory by systemically moving all Bosnian Muslims. Serbia, with Bosnian Serbs, attacked Bosniaks with former Yugoslavian military equipment. The Security Council decided that these enclaves should be safe area protected by a contingent of UN peacekeepers. Serbs committed the largest massacre in Europe in one such area. An estimated 23,000 women and elderly people were put on buses and driven to Muslim-controlled territory, while 8,000 battle-aged men were slaughtered and detained. Now, my understanding of people who complain about the saying that what's going on in Gaza, where incidentally in northern Gaza, most people have been expelled.
That happened again.
We were there a year ago.
Oh, I'm about to die again.
Have been expelled and driven south.
That's the second time on this boss that I've been meleeed by the tentacle. And it's like the only way that happens is if the tank gets out of range or if I pull aggro. And I'm pretty sure I didn't pull aggro. I'll take that res, thank you.
Certainly more than 8,000 men have been killed in Gaza. We know that that's probably 3 times that amount of children have been killed.
AOE incoming.
But my understanding from people who say it's not a genocide is like, well, not everybody's dead.
Yeah, there's still people alive, dude.
It's just objectively a genocide. Like whether everyone's dead. Like okay, maybe if it gets to 200,000, we can call it a Holocaust or something like that. Like it's just a genocide.
I'm scared.
Like there's
I'm scared.
I just think
there's no ambiguity.
It's no ambiguity, and it's a fake. The idea that there is just a waste of time.
I mean, I wish that I don't know what that New York Times reporter did if she followed up with. I mean, she did good follow-ups with J.D. Vance prior to the election with those interviews, but she should have said, "Is Amnesty International, are they full of anti-Semites?" Because they just concluded that Israel.
Well,
how about Human Rights Watch?
He was good enough to say other people might think it is. I just don't.
Yeah. I guess.
I mean, he should be locked up, frankly.
Yeah, that's as you said, it's the banality of evil, right? Where you're sitting there doing PR spin for them.
I mean, he could be locked up, and people could just simply say, like, "Well, you think you're locked up,
yeah, exactly.
But we don't."
Yeah. I don't see you in the stockade. I don't see your arms and head through a stockade right now. You might think and feel like they're in a stockade.
And like this is just I saw the movie The Brutalist last week, right? Like which is about the Holocaust in many ways. And there's a character there who has osteoporosis from her malnutrition in a concentration camp and can't walk. And all I could think about was Gaza and how many thousands of Palestinians are going to experience similar health outcomes if they're lucky enough to even survive this. Their lives will be destroyed. And if you don't see that connection there, he's incentivized not to because he would be complicit in the genocide. But if you also can't see it, and you can only see it from the perspective of because the United States was on the right side of that war, and because the Holocaust has been used, frankly, by the United States to paint ourselves internationally as the good side that's standing up against tyranny, and domestically that's how a lot of people perceive us. If you can't see that we're inflicting that same exact damage, even if it's slightly indirectly with Israel right now, and see that historical through line.
Like, no shot I'm pulling aggro. So, why is the tank getting out of range and getting me killed? Right? Like, am I stupid? Am I stupid? I'm getting meleeed by this tentacle. What's up with that?
Then that's just a little bit of racism, because you don't see Palestinians with the same level of humanity that you do people who are of whiter skin tone who you may know in your personal life.
Let's play this clip. This is from a YouTuber, Corey Gill Schuster, interviewing people in Jerusalem. Now, I'm convinced that in any cohort, you can find individuals who are going to say bat crap crazy things that are not reflective of the broader cohort. But there is absolutely zero
question mark has been called.
Zero indication amongst the Israeli population, and hashtag not all Israelis, but in terms of the majority, this is based upon polling. This is based upon the fact that Netanyahu is in a much better position than he was a year and a half ago.
Like, I'm not doing enough damage to pull aggro.
This attitude, and frankly,
I'm not doing enough damage to pull aggro from the tank.
I don't
like, if I was pulling aggro from the tank, I would expect to be top of the meters, fucking free and clear, just looking breezy as hell. You just look scary. What's the problem has been called. Getting meleeed by the tentacle.
Israeli relatives. But I definitely have people in my extended family whose perspective on this is very similar. The idea that there are no Palestinians, they're just Arabs.
Jump 3 times.
Which, if you were to use that formulation about any other ethnicity, race, whatever you want to say, would be considered so reprehensible that none of these people would say it. Like, you would never say, hey, there's a war in the Congo, and people, or in South Africa. There's black people all over Africa. Why can't they just go into this other country? Like, you can't. The idea of someone saying that, like, I don't even remember anybody saying that, during the height of support of South Africa and apartheid, even on the right. Like, nobody would ever think to say, look, the entire continent is full of black people living in other countries. Why can't they just go there? They're not South Africans. This woman says that and worse.
How many civilians have been killed in Gaza, from what you know?
Who gives a shit?
Great.
Okay, but don't you feel like...
Average Israeli, by the way. Average citizen of Israel, by the way.
Like, for example, children?
Children grow up to be Arabs. I shouldn't say this.
Yeah, you shouldn't.
I
You
know,
really
I read
shouldn't.
the numbers last week. My memory died and went to heaven.
Oh, good.
don't
Well,
think children-
well, you know, at least one part of you is going to heaven,
Collect or
sister.
stand in circle.
Sure, your memory died and went to heaven, and that's sad, but at least one part of you is.
should suffer, but they're always casualties. And since they do a lot of poo-or-voo, that is a natural result.
Do you understand why the world is so angry? Because they keep seeing
Overall,
Overall.
overall, the world does not really understand what's going on here. They do
Oh.
not understand, grasp
Oh, yeah?
the concept that Israel was attacked.
I'm scared.
And Palestinians, there is no such thing as
Where's the tank? I'm
Palestinians.
scared.
They're Arabs who have many countries to flee to and nobody wants them to.
Where's the tank?
But
I'm scared.
if we do call them Palestinians, their parents use them as human shields to gain sympathy. The
Oh, great.
natural instinct of a Jewish mother is to protect her child. Palestinian women do not have that.
How do you know this?
From years of living here.
Can you
Great.
An example of something you've seen?
That is
Amazing.
You just see in real time the dehumanization.
And notice, I am not saying average Jewish person. What this person is saying is contrary to the faith of Judaism, of literally any religion. Literally no religion condones what she's talking about. Not even Satanism. Satanism is actually a pretty based religion, by the way. Like, okay, maybe that might get me canceled. Satanism is based, but you know, like all religions endeavor to be a framework that, like, by bare minimum, has a positive effect on the lives of their followers. That's the purpose of religion.
Collect or
Right?
stand in circle.
Some people are nerds and need, like, atheist philosophy, and some people like religion, and that helps them. And so we create religions to help each other, you know? Like, this is the average Israeli citizen. This is what people in Israel really believe.
I'm a mother. I have the motherly instinct like a human being to
Yeah.
protect my children. The
I'm a human.
Palestinians, they don't have that inherently, is what she's saying.
All right,
Oh my God.
But what is
the
but what is the,
rhetoric we've heard from Israelis about Palestinians for decades.
but that I want to just show. I mean, that sentence there says everything you need to know. We are superior to them. I am loving towards my children. They put their children in harm.
At least it was worth it for upgrading the. Oh my God! What the hell? You just jumping up here like that, honey bunny? You just jumping up here like that, honey bunny? Oh my God! Okay, so the tank just linked the interrupts in the party chat to shame me and the warlock, and said that if a shadow priest is beating you on interrupts, you should reconsider what you're doing. And so the warlock immediately rejoindered, pull up taunts. Because, you know what? As someone that died to a few melee tentacle hits there, yeah, I'm kind of with the warlock on that one. Pull up the taunts, brother. I feel like in no universe should I ever be dying to a tentacle taunt. I feel like that's definitely a you problem.
Way. Like,